All right, folks. Good evening, WNBA and women's basketball fans, on a two-game but very good evening of WNBA hoops for this Tuesday night. And welcome in, folks, to the WNBA 365 Network, your comprehensive home of all things WNBA and women's basketball. We will, of course, folks, as usual, with a late-night game getting on with, we should be joined by Crystal Thomas or Marquez Anderson or Shorty Mamba 24 sometime during the course of our program, with the start time being pushed back due to the late game this evening, or the late games tonight, with both Atlanta, Seattle, and LA playing Dallas this evening. But again, folks, Cal McClure joining for the time being here from the Calamac Sports Studios in San Diego. Of course, folks, we'll get to the two-game recap, some college news, and get to the one game scheduled for tomorrow. And also, folks, we will as well get to the latest with WNBA All-Star voting and much more as well here this evening. Get involved with the program, folks, on social media over at facebook.com/WNBA365. Find us on Twitter at WNBA365, at Calamac3, at ShortyMama24, at Pup1010, or at Omarquez, hashtag WNBA365, or find the live chat box in the right corner of your screen. And let's hear your questions, comments, concerns, or other commentary when there is a break in the action. And also, folks, as a friendly reminder for those of you keeping score at home, again, as a reminder, once more, no shows next week due to a vacation period for all of us here at the network. And with that, folks, we'll get to the two games tonight. First up, a thrilling game first tonight from Seattle, Washington, where the Atlanta Dream just held off the Seattle Storm tonight 91-86 in a back-and-forth game from Key Arena in Seattle. And again, that again finished in overtime this evening. Final numbers to know: Demarius Dantas, folks, great game for her, receiving 22 points, and Bria Holmes chipped in 13 or 15 tonight as well, 15 for ATL tonight. Jewel Lloyd, 27 points, and Brianna Stewart with 16, but ultimately it's too little too late for the Storm this evening. And folks, with this being an ESPN3 game, obviously I'm sure most people or a lot of the fans were watching the ESPN2 game, but if you were split screening this game, or if you were really watching this game wholeheartedly, man, I mean, a wire-to-wire finish, and a game, of course, tied up at the end of the game with the made three-pointer by the Storm. Ultimately, though, things get away from Seattle in this ball game. Lasia Clarendon fouling out for Atlanta. But at least, though, this game going to overtime, folks. I mean, two teams, of course, that have been, on hot streaks so far. Of course, the Storm had been pretty much, unbeatable at Key Arena for the most part to start the season. And, of course, Atlanta has been great in stretches, either on the road or at home so far. And I think tonight it showed off more. I think tonight for Atlanta, at least, this showed off a lot of their depth, I think, in regards to, you see Clarendon foul out. Tiffany Hayes doesn't have, that well of a game, but you're seeing Holmes and then Dantas step up in a big situation. And I think that, as we have talked about, folks, in regards to what we thought about ATL early in the season, losing Angel McCoughtry for at least half of the season for the full year. How will this team play? That's a bigger burden on Tiffany Hayes. But considering, again, that, we've seen Lasia Clarendon break up, but again, Lasia fouls out tonight. But you see other players step up in those voids for ATL this evening. And, I mean, again, you're getting a 37-point effort combined out of both Dantas and then Bria Holmes, who has played well in many games so far for the Dream so far this season. So Atlanta continues to impress, and probably, I think, surprising a lot of people, too, out there so far on the season. For Seattle, I mean, they were this game was wire to wire. They erased a 10-point lead or deficit with about roughly 3 minutes left to go in regulation time. And they rallied back, got fired up and got back in this ball game. Jewel Lloyd, again, clutch performance for her, tying the game up with that three-pointer at the very end of regulation time here this evening. And as well, Lloyd, again, I think that she has somewhat been in the top 5 running for MVP. I mean, I don't think that her performances can be diminished so far this season. She's played phenomenal so far for Seattle. I mean, between her and Stewie and Bird and a couple of the role players in there with those 3 stars, I mean, Seattle is set up for a long time here. And Jewel Lloyd has continued to impress so many people, myself included as well. And then Brianna Stewart chips in 16 points. So tonight they get roughly 43 points combined between both Stewart and Lloyd this evening. Christy Wilson says, ATL very resilient. And I would agree with that, I think, because normally when you build up a big lead in situations and you somewhat squander that big lead, 9 times out of 10, Christy, that probably rattles a lot of teams' psyches and mentalities. But ATL, shook off that rush, that run by the Storm. They tied the game. They win the game in overtime, more importantly. So, again, ATL, I agree, Christy, ATL very resilient coming back, of course, getting that 10-point lead at race, but, again, winning the game, more importantly, in overtime. And Todd Mintz says Atlanta had tough defense in the overtime period for sure. Cannot get over the intentional foul call when Atlanta was up with 1 point with 4 seconds left. Usually the fouling team gets the benefit of the doubt. And obviously, I think, though, and Todd, I think to go with your point here, that this has somewhat been I think maybe another rough season so far for WNBA officiating crews. Obviously, in wake of 2 postseasons that were somewhat spoiled in regards to, of course, Minnesota-Phoenix game 2 in Phoenix in 2014 with the phantom foul call on Noelle Quinn in the winning moments of that ball game. Of course, the Game 4 debacle with the Sparks and Lynx in the finals last year, missing the 8-second backcourt violation, ultimately, of course, missing a crucial no call by Nneka Ogwumike or a shot clock violation. And in spite of the fact, though, TM, that we have heard from Lisa Borders, and I know that you like to kind of harp on the negativity of this story, and I think it's truly justified, that in spite of what Borders has wanted with the officiating crews being better trained, there's been more reviews, I think, for really ticky-tacky calls, I think, so far this season that has really dragged on games where you've seen more and more teams having to foul in blowout games because of what we've seen in maybe recent memory. But again, perhaps one call going one way or the other for ATL. See, but again, the Dream in overtime beat the Storm in a wire-to-wire finish, 91-86, a final in OT this evening from the great the Pac Northwest this evening. Again, Dream 91, Storm 86, your final in OT, nonetheless, from the Key Arena. Last game of the night from the Sports Entertainment Center of the World and Staples Center in downtown LA. The LA Sparks built up a 23-8 lead and nearly gave it away again, but they did, though, beat the Dallas Wings at Staples tonight, 97-87 in a game attended by roughly 7,300 people, again, due to the 7 o'clock start time. And if you folks that aren't from California know, rush hour traffic in the state is awful. So that's why a lot of seats were empty tonight at Staples Center. Skylar Diggins-Smith, 28 points leading the way for Dallas. And Alicia Gray, another great game for her, 12 points in this rookie clad-led Wings team. Chelsea Gray, back-to-back amazing games for Chelsea Gray, 24 points. And Nneka Ogwumike throws in 21 points for Los Angeles this evening. For Los Angeles. For the Wings, at least tonight, in regards to Dallas, Diggins-Smith once more leads the way. And I think coming off the game on Friday, we probably saw, we saw Glory Johnson have a breakout game tonight. Glory, rough night at the office in regards to fouls, and also leaving some shots short, either inside or whatnot. Again, I somewhat saw, though, a little bit of over-aggressive play in regards to either the fouls on the offensive front or some of the fouls on the defensive end of things. But Skylar Diggins-Smith, at least tonight, another great game for her, and she's looked. I know that we may have touched base a little bit so far in regards to players somewhat having to rekindle or adjust their game around injuries. And so far, I think Sky has really bounced back from that ACL injury a couple seasons ago. Obviously, didn't really have a good season last year, but so far, it's been pretty impressive for Skylar Diggins. And of course, Alicia Gray, once more, another great game for her. Got really hot, though, in that second quarter. The third quarter, roughly, all those three-pointers, she was making 12 points. Again, to somewhat pace it here for the Dallas offense here this evening. And then for the Sparks, Chelsea Gray, back-to-back in fuego performances for Chelsea Gray, coming off of a monster game in Phoenix over the weekend, and carries that over tonight. And again, was doing it pretty much on all ends of the offensive side of the ball. Between going inside and penetrating on the drives, her mid-range game, and of course a couple of big threes. So Chelsea Gray, back-to-back solid efforts. And, of course, Neko Wnba cannot underestimate or cannot count out the MVP of the league from last season, 21 points. So her and Gray go for 45 combined this evening for Los Angeles. Diggins, Smith, and Gray combining for, doing some quick math here, going for 40 combined. So nearly 40-plus combined points amongst both Diggins, Smith, and Gray. And then Chelsea Gray and Neko Wnba for Los Angeles here this evening. Todd clarifies, not upset with the officials, want the players to decide the game. I think we all do, Todd. I think that is the right thing to do. So obviously, intentional fouls or not, I think coaches as well, Todd, get a little bit of blame too, because when you're losing by 10 points in the last minute, is there really any hope to win the game? So I think too, perhaps maybe cutting down on the fouling, intentionally fouling, perhaps, under a certain time when the game is well out of reach. So I agree with you though in regards to letting the players decide and let the referees put the whistles in their pockets. Christy Wilson says Sparks need to work on maintaining a lead and not letting big leads get away. And I agree with that 100%. I think although a lot of people, us included, have said that in regards to LA, coughing up leads as we saw with Dallas on Friday, we saw with Indiana earlier in the season in Indiana, so obviously LA worked up a 23-8 start and again let that lead somewhat squander down the road as well. Todd says LA was never going to lose the game tonight. Too little, too late. Dallas had very poor defense as usual this evening, sadly. Game plan was to attack the basket, and the Sparks did that in building that big lead. And Todd also says, was very good to see Jantel Lavender hit her usual automatic mid-range shot that is unstoppable when 5 of 8. Very good balance. Chelsea is playing superb these last 2 games. Candace as well had a great game too, coming off of somewhat of a game where Parker didn't really find her groove up until late in the game, though. A couple of big baskets against Phoenix tonight or a couple days ago. And also, Christy also says Chelsea Gray is becoming a star. And I think Crystal Thomas, who tweeted out before the game, and she said Chelsea Gray hopefully in the All-Star game somewhere too. And Todd also says, don't forget about Neko Wnba, 21 points as well. And we brought up Neko too as well again with a 45 combined point effort between Chelsea Gray and Neko Wnba here this evening. And Todd and Christy, again, both agree. Neko Wnba playing very well as well for both teams. Playing well for Los Angeles, I should say, here this evening. So, again, the Sparks win the night over the Dallas Wings, 97-87, to now advance their record to 4-0 now at Staples Center this evening. But again, to reiterate and recap the final scores from the night's games, again, the Dream over Seattle in overtime from Seattle tonight, 91-86. LA over Dallas, 97-87. The final score as well tonight from that game as well this evening here from Staples Center. Folks, looking things over real quick. As a reminder, folks, by the way, WNBA All-Star Game voting for next year's All-Star Game in Seattle did start today. Again, rules of this as well. You can vote on the WNBA.com website or on the WNBA app, or vote 10 times per day on Facebook or Twitter. Type in the player's first and last name with hashtag WNBA vote to send your favorite players to the Emerald City for this year's 2017 All-Star Game being held on July 22nd at 12:30 p.m. from the Key Arena in Seattle, Washington. So again, that's how you can get involved with All-Star Game voting. And again, folks, we asked you again, but we'll ask again, what ways, though, could the WNBA, in your mind or in your opinion, improve the All-Star Game weekend experience for the fans going to the All-Star Game? Chime in the chat box or on Facebook or Twitter. Again, we recommended either a Fan Fest type of event or Bring Back a Skills Challenge. We want your input, though, on what you feel could be added to the All-Star Weekend to add more flavor and more pizzazz to the WNBA All-Star Weekend up there in Seattle, Washington. Folks, 2 stories I wanted to talk about tonight from the college ranks, at least, or one that involves women's hoops, the ones that involves a similar story to this, and was hoping to have Crystal or Marquez on to really chew on this as well. Christy, about the All-Star Game, she says, Fan Fest sounds like a good idea. We'll have more about that later on in the show, but folks, one very important story I wanted to bring up here real quick from the college ranks, which came out roughly 5 days ago, courtesy of Slam Magazine and ESPN's men's college basketball analyst, Jay Billis. A story, folks, involving Dylan and Dakota Gonzalez. They are twin sisters currently playing right now at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, the UNLV. And they have actually, folks, agreed, or they have both decided to forego their last year of eligibility to pursue a music career, folks. But that was also due to added pressure by the NCAA over a couple of ethical or a couple of compliance issues with both the players in regards to their music careers. And folks, in a separate story involving this with student athletes and their hopes and expectations for their lives, the Central Florida football place kicker has also been asked to forego his college career due to having over 50,000 subscribers on his YouTube channel, which he pretty much does as a vlog, basically, of his life as a student at UCF and also before games. So, folks, in two separate incidents, the NCAA is really coming down hard on these three pairs, or these two pairs, again, the sisters and, of course, the place kicker, for somewhat doing what they're supposed to be going to college for outside of sports, is either their college major or their daily hobbies, basically. Now, folks, again, I did not go to a four-year NCAA university. I work at one, but did not go to one. And frankly, folks, I don't really know what to say about this issue. Again, you can find out more on both stories by probably just Google searching or visit Slam Online in regards to Dylan and Dakota's story. Now, again, Dylan and Dakota both were transfers into UNLV in the past couple of years. And again, they have been under scrutiny and pressure lately. Again, because they have just dropped a single, one of their first musical tracks, a couple days ago. And they had announced that they were foregoing their last year because of not only that, but again, there was added scrutiny and pressure from the NCAA governing body in regards to something going on in regards to this. And again, we all know, sadly, again, that there's a dark side and a lot of loopholes in regards to student athletes playing under the NCAA microscope again. Now, again, there's not a whole lot behind the story, folks, but again, wanted to bring that up here. Again, we may bring it up more, though, when we have a guest in here again. But to find out more, folks, again, search those two stories. But again, both Dylan and Dakota Gonzalez out of UNLV, again, foregoing their last year of eligibility, again, due to both career choices, but also added NCAA sanctions as well against them, too, for that as well. And Christy Wilson writes in to say, NCAA is being stupid by what I feel is punishing these people for doing something they each enjoy doing. So again, folks, we'll have more on these stories coming up later on, presumably either tomorrow or on Thursday when we are back here on air with you folks sometime later this week. Folks, again, there's only one game tomorrow on the WNBA schedule, and that'll be the Liberty and Sun, starting at 4 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, or evening, I should say, on League Pass and on MSG. Again, so Liberty and Sun tomorrow here this evening. Again, folks, I got to touch base on everything here tonight. This may be probably one of the shortest shows in perhaps all of the network history here. But again, to recap the scores from tonight, Dream over the Storm, 91-86, a final from Seattle, Washington. Dallas and LA over Dallas, 97-87, a final score this evening. So with that, folks, we're gonna keep it here for a little bit longer, but we're gonna actually switch from the show format to let you folks get more involved here. We got Todd and Christy in the chat box, folks. So with that, I might ramble a bit more about both games, but we're gonna open this up now as a form show. So if you have any more questions, comments, or concerns, definitely, folks, keep me awake here for the next couple of minutes here. Again, send in any questions. Again, it doesn't have to be about the WNBA women's hoops. Ask away inside the chat box or on Twitter, and we'll give you we'll just kind of have a little fun here, I guess, now to kind of break away from regular ordinary stuff. So feel free to ask anything, folks. Just keep it PG-13 at least. Ask me anything if you want in the chat box or what have you. I think, folks, as I go back, though, to the Dream game, I want to bring up a quick note for you folks from the Dream game real quick from our good pal Anila Khan, of course, our great writer from Toronto. Tiffany Hayes, by the way, folks, surpassed the 2,000-point mark here this evening with the win for ATL. So Tip Hayes again surpasses 2,000 points for her career this evening from the Dreams victory over Seattle, 91-86. So thanks to Anila for providing that content here this evening. I think, folks, as I think back to the Dream game again once more, is probably more, in spite of ATL's win, folks, it's more about Seattle, I think, erasing that 10-point deficit late in the fourth quarter. Because I think without that 10-point run or 10-point swing, obviously Seattle loses that game at home. And I think, again, as well, not seeing Tip Hayes leading the way as she normally has. I mean, like I said, she's played great all season so far, don't get me wrong. But I think Demarius Dantas has somewhat been a wild card in the equation somewhat, or in the poker hand, presumably, for Atlanta so far. We've seen her play great in spurts, and somewhat seeing her play great is really good to see. And also, I think, and also as well, Bria Holmes, as mentioned earlier, she's also played great so far this season. And between Hayes, Holmes, Clarendon, and Dantas, that's a pretty good four-player mix right now. And those four players really, folks, have really carried the brunt of the burden, somewhat left behind by Angel McCoskey's absence so far this season. And I think that those four players deserve a lot of praise and applause. So they have done a phenomenal job getting Atlanta in a very good spot so far. And again, I would probably say again, folks, getting Atlanta in a spot where they really have, I think, may have surprised a lot of people that probably didn't have ATL this hype and stage or having them play this well. Really setting McCoskey's loss. And I think Atlanta has really been out there to prove the world wrong. And so far, great job so far for the Dream doing that so far this evening for ATL, with between Dantas and Holmes, and as mentioned, Clarendon and Hayes as well, doing their jobs for the Dream so far this season. And then with Seattle, Jewel Lloyd, obviously with Sue Bird and Stewart missing a couple games early in the season, Jewel Lloyd has really stepped up her game to fill the shoes of both those players. And more so, I think it's between Stewie and Lloyd filling the void for Sue Bird in a couple of years. Obviously, Birdie trying to go on to play in 2020, can't falter for that. But definitely between Lloyd and Stewie, really two very good cornerstones of that franchise. And really, they have played their tails off so far. And again, getting a 43 combined point effort out of Stewart and Lloyd is huge for Seattle. And obviously, them rallying back from that 10-point deficit also huge as well this evening as well. To the Dallas and Sparks game. Again, Dallas, so entertaining to watch. But again, tonight, though, really, though, folks, the turning point, definitely that first quarter where Dallas went a very long stretch of time of not making any baskets. Again, losing after the first quarter, 23-20 to 23, 23-8 after the first quarter of play, and really, again, struggled from the field to start the game, but somewhat again, Skylar Diggins playing a great game again. And I don't think that we can say too much about these rookies again. Kayla Davis, another great game. Alicia Gray, 12 points, and again, that combination really, I think, in spite of what we had really seen and really have talked about in regards to to how the Sims and Diggins backcourt, again, kind of flopped in Dallas. So far, I think, through the sample size, the Gray and Davis backcourt has been pretty good so far and spot on for Dallas. And then for the LA Sparks, Chelsea Gray, really, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, folks, but really, I think, in my mind, kind of put her name on the map during her heroic, her rescue effort of the Sparks. I think in games 2 and game 4 of the finals last year, and these past 2 games has done the same thing, leading the way for LA. And really, as I said earlier, scoring in different varieties and ways. I mean, from penetrations, from hard drives, reverse layups, mid-range game, beyond the arc. Really, in 2 games, between the Mercury game on Saturday and then tonight, has really, I think, come to play and has brought her lunchbox to the floor. And then, of course, Neko Ogumake, always in fuego, 21 points. And again, has always seemed to find a way to improve from game to game. And I think that the stat tonight on ESPN during the game was, the field goal percentage wasn't the same, but I think was averaging more points so far this season than her season last year, where she shot 67% from the field. Incredible start again for Neko Ogumake so far this season. Let's get back to the chat box real quick. Christy asked about the Golden State Warriors. Well, NorCal team, I know that SoCal and NorCal have a big rivalry, but hey, congrats to them, though, on their championship victory. Todd says, very intrigued by this New York and Connecticut game. Liberty have regrouped with 4 home wins after the blowout loss to LA in the Garden. Stokes has played great ball with Zealous. CT will come in with 3 wins and 4 tries. You know, Todd, I would agree because the Sun, or I think both teams, though, I think, Todd, to at least get you to your point here, they both, we talk a lot, I think, in sports about, you know, bounce back wins after a loss. New York after getting blown out in LA, the Sun, I think, probably losing after Minnesota. Both have rebounded nicely in stretches after some rough games. And I think I agree with you, though, about Kia Stokes. I think she's somewhat under the radar behind both TC, Tina Charles, and Sugar Rogers. Of course, those two have played out of their minds and have had a great year. But Stokes, I think, has really helped New York out in a lot of ways, and someone, I think, trying to help take the burden off of Tina Charles in certain stretches of games, where, as we've talked about a lot with Tina Charles and her burnout, of course, late in games, Stokes is a very good compliment, I think, or consolation prize to go to after Tina Charles does move on. And I think, Todd, to go to your back half of the question, too, is Shavonte Zealous, too, has also played great. And I think she's played good, too, since that trade from the Fever. I know I talk a lot, folks. I harp and preach about change of scenery. And so far, she's had a good job, done a great job at adjusting in New York's system so far. Let's get to Michael Liu. He says, Dallas Wings. What about Cam Bates going to Dallas? And as well about Evelyn Akahar. High draft pick, not playing very much. You know, Mike, I don't know. I think that Liz is kind of, I don't want to say overstating her welcome, but I think how she left Tulsa, I think, kind of somewhat turned that franchise off on her value. I know that she has, you know, that she can bring a lot, but it's a matter, though, of is she going to be fully committed wholeheartedly and 100% to that Wings franchise? Now, I know that there was some problems, I think, with Liz on the court a little bit towards coaches, and I think as well, I think, though, that it kind of, though, stems back to the Olympics last year, along with, you know, more so, I think it kind of goes back to a lot of the off-the-court nonsense, sadly, in regards to her missing training camp for the Olympics due to attending a concert festival, having the beef on Twitter with Andrew Bogut. It's really a couple of things that really, I think, just with a team like Dallas that's led so heavily with rookies and young kids, is it worth the risk, I think, for the Wings to bring Cam Bates in? I mean, it would add size to somewhat supplement the Courtney Parrish injury, but I just don't know if Cam Bates is the right puzzle piece to go in and put in with Diggin Smith, with Karima Christmas Kelly, Gloria Johnson, and also with a lot of that young talent down there. I don't know if you want that anchor and that baggage and burden to really bring that team down. In my mind, Christy Wilson also says, WNBA rookie class has been pretty impressive so far this season. I think it kind of starts with Kayla Davis and her debut, 20 points in the win over Phoenix earlier in the season. Sydney Weiss out of Oregon State. You know, I was at that game, folks, and that building at Staples Center was just going bananas and was on fire with Weiss's threes. And Christy, take a page out of your book. I had the Daniel Bryan yes chant going after every made three. She was just on fire, and you saw those players just, you know, feeding Sid every other possession. I mean, she was like, I think 7 of 7 or 8 for 8 to start that game before she finally missed. She really lit the court on fire. And I think, though, that all the rookies so far with Dallas, with LA, and other places, it's been very good to see such a, you know, again, seeing the true parity of this league, I think, though, too, was seeing teams like Dallas beat Los Angeles, what we've seen so far. They have been very, very fun to watch and very captivating and intriguing. Todd, to use a big word from you, very intriguing to see a lot of these rookies playing well so far this season. Todd also says, if Cam Bates decides to come back into the league, the Wings should try and deal her. She has had enough time in the organization. They have to move on from her drama. Todd, I agree with you 100%, my friend, about that, because I just touched base on that. Because I think, as mentioned again, I don't know if you really want the burden of someone, again, who's had a lot of disgruntled stuff in the organization, even back in Tulsa. I don't know if you want that bad vibe and bad chemistry to mix in with these young kids so far. Todd also says Karima Christmas Kelly, who had been playing well, was not as much of a factor. I think, of course, we see this a lot, though, in regards to team sports. Again, teams and players have good games, mediocre, all right games, and some of those bad games. But I think, though, as we've already said about rebound games, man, I wouldn't be surprised if KCM had another or KCK had another great game or breakout game soon. And Christy Wilson also says, think Cam Beige has burnt that bridge with the Wings in the league in general. Also says Liz's issues became a toxic mess when Teresa Edwards was coach. They did not get along. So obviously, again, it goes from on the court in regards to coaching issues. And again, I look at it more, though, in regards to off the court demeanor, too, in regards to, again, holding out a training camp for the national team. I think more important than your WNBA team, of course, playing for your country, not going there to attend a concert festival, and also, again, having beef with one of your male teammates in regards to Andrew Bogut a couple of years ago, too. So obviously, Liz Cambage as well, presumably a factor as well with our news here this evening. But again, once more to give you back your scores again, folks, tonight. Again, Dream 91, Seattle 86 in OT, Dallas 97, LA 97, and Dallas 87. Finals tonight in the W. And again, only one game on your schedule tomorrow night between New York and Connecticut, 4 o'clock tip-off on the West Coast on League Pass and also on MSG locally in the New York area. Todd goes to another question here. He says, why is Weiss not playing? I realize you can only play so many minutes, but what is she doing you think that Coach Agler is not thrilled with? Todd, it's interesting, obviously, you would think that after such one great game that you would see another player or that player at least get more playing time. Obviously, I think it's been documented, though, plenty of times that, of course, Brian Agler and his, and, of course, somewhat distaste. I don't know how much distaste he really has, though, in my mind, in regards to rookies. But, when you have the conference all-time three-point leader on your team, you should be playing them a bit more. Now, again, of course, that's transition. That's the transition gap between college and the pros. But, Todd, I think, though, that obviously – I think with any coach, any sport, you have to earn your playing time. But I think that in due time, I think that you will see Sydney Weiss getting more playing time, presumably maybe in a few more of those, really lopsided affairs as we saw with the Mystics earlier this year again, where the Sparks really got out and running. And maybe I would even want to see Weiss come in much like the Fever game come into the game in a very somewhat crunch time / pressure-packed situation where you need a big basket to either tie, take the lead, or cut a big deficit. So I would like to see Weiss come in a little bit more, perhaps, maybe later, maybe in those type of situations. And Michael Law says Weiss hasn't been making shots, and of course, well, that's with any player, I think, as well. In regards to that, so again, folks, keep those questions and comments running, and we'll get to more of those coming up throughout the course of the remainder of the program. But again, folks, as a friendly reminder, once more, again, WNBA All-Star Game voting is open. Again, you can vote, cast your ballot from the starting lineup, again, over on WNBA.com or through the WNBA app, or you can also vote 10 times per day on social media via Facebook and Twitter. Just type in the first and last name of your favorite player with hashtag WNBA vote, and to cast your vote, again, through social media. But again, folks, with it being a one-man show, again, we welcome more questions, comments, or concerns that you may have. So please, again, folks, keep those coming here because this is kind of keeping us on the air for right now, so we don't have to set some type of record for being like the shortest show ever. I guess, folks, I can again reiterate once more as a reminder again, and we'll be doing this again throughout the course of the remainder of the week. But again, folks, we will be off air as a reminder all next week, again, from Monday, June 19th until the following Monday after, again, because we're going to be on a vacation period. So again, it's just a reminder, we will again be off air all next week and the following Monday after due to vacation. We will also be off air this Friday too. Again, I'm at work on Friday. So again, that's just a reminder once more, off air this Friday and again, off air all next week. And again, next Monday, again, due to vacation period. Once more this evening. And with that, folks, again, we invited again to keep sending in your stuff again before we do again close doors here for the night. We do again appreciate all you folks viewing us tonight. Again here this evening, we've had a lot of good viewership and also great interaction as well here this evening for you folks out there once more. Michael chimes in to say it does not seem more competitive this year. It's like anybody could beat anybody. And Michael, I actually made that point, actually, Mike, good point. I brought that up actually at the end of our last show back on June 9th in regards to seeing anybody beat anybody. And again, we've talked about it. We've seen it, though, I think, folks, not just this year, but also I think we've seen it as well the past couple years. I mean, I think between seeing, taking, for example, again, seeing Connecticut take down Minnesota a couple times last year, again, seeing the Stars give us Sparks a couple of good games last year. So obviously, parity in this league is getting there slowly. And again, seeing some of these teams, of course, that probably we wouldn't have picked to win games, that, of course, win games in big situations. And Todd says that's why it's a great league. It has never been better on the court so far. And I think that during the 13 years I've watched the WNBA, folks, I don't recall seeing this much competitive nature between the teams probably since at least 2013. It looked like that really was somewhat of maybe a turning point in my view, at least, being here for as long as I have. And that it's been so much fun to watch. I mean, there's so much riding on every game, regardless of the team's records. I mean, there's a lot riding, of course, with those 8 playoff spots, but again, a lot riding on both, in regards to the games and also everything else included. And Christy says this season seems to be more competitive than before so far this season. And I totally agree again. And I think, though, as well, that when you see now, again, I'm sure a lot of us are either somewhat, I think, disappointed in regards to seeing Kelsey Plum getting up to a slow start. But I think, though, that outside of Kelsey, there's been so many other great stories in regards to either Kayla Davis and Alicia Gray in Dallas. So far, seeing a lot of other players and doing great across the league so far. So obviously, this year so far has been great, folks. And obviously next year, I mean, I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but next year's draft is going to be pretty loaded next year. But obviously, so far this season, I agree with Mike and Todd and Christy so far. It just seems like that so far this season, there's been a lot of great stuff in regards to player play. Now, folks, to get back to what I was talking about, talking about the All-Star game. Now, again, folks, WNBA All-Star game going to be held July 22nd in Seattle, Washington at the Key Arena. So, again, we are sending our Dynamite co-host Crystal Thomas to Seattle this year for the All-Star game. First time we're ever sending anyone to the All-Star game. So we will have a lot of fun doing that. So Crystal will have complete control of our IG account during that stretch of time. Christy Wilson writes in to say a lot of stars like Chelsea Gray are emerging this season. Obviously, we talked about it, I think, during our draft show last year, when the move was made to deal Jonquel Jones's draft rights to the Sun for Chelsea Gray. I think, that somewhat added, I think for one, that actually gave Gray a chance to really showcase her talents coming out of Duke. But also, I think, like I said earlier in the show, she really kind of got her name put on the map again, folks, during the finals last season. Again, she really kept LA in a lot of those games last season. And this year, through the 2 games of the Phoenix game last week and then tonight, 20-plus point efforts, and is playing great in both those games, really is emerging as a star in this league. And I would probably even say maybe a candidate for most improved players so far, perhaps. Again, I know it's probably not that. I know it's early, but I think that's probably a good way to go with Chelsea Gray so far this season. MVP, maybe not. Maybe, perhaps, she'll probably get a couple of votes. I mean, at least what she's played so far at this point. In regards to the All-Star game, Todd says, right now, who would you have as your starting 5 in the for the Western Conference in the All-Star game? Todd says he's got Nneka, Diana, Lloyd, Stewart, and Griner. Does anyone have anything that differs from this? Sylvia Fowles is probably in my starting 5 over Griner by head and shoulders in that one. Definitely have Taurasi in mind. Definitely have Agumake in mind as well. And Jewel Lloyd definitely as well is in my conversation, too. And I don't know who my fourth would be. Stewart's probably in my running too, but I would probably go with Big Sill, just head and shoulders over Brittany Griner. I mean, they're both going to be named in my view. So definitely going to go with those 5 or 4. And then Michael wants to ask who deserves to be an All-Star this year who hasn't made it before. Definitely Chelsea Gray, I think. I think Chelsea Gray definitely, if she hasn't been one yet, definitely is going to be one this year so far this season. So LA could be seeing quite a cluster of players over there. Christy says, chimes in and also says Chelsea Gray. And Michael also chimes in to say, I believe he meant Jonquil Jones out of Connecticut or for the Sun, getting a lot of rebounds as well. So I don't know. Todd, I'll probably have to sit down and really plan out my starting 5 for both sides of the story. But definitely agree with you with Lloyd and with Lloyd, Diana, and NECA, and probably Stewart. But I might actually flip flop and put Fowles ahead of Griner so far for the center spot so far here with the Western Conference All Stars with that. But again, folks, getting back to the All Star game again. So Christy Wilson said Fan Fest. I know that Crystal Thomas said to bring back the skills challenge and the 3-point challenge for the All-Star game. Folks, I would also say Fan Fest will kind of, again, go back to our All-Star game conversation again. You know, again, and again, as mentioned again, I hate, again, to compare male sports to female sports. But again, being able to attend the Major League Baseball All-Star game festivities in San Diego in my hometown last year, I know it was a whole week-long thing, and we had, you know, things on Friday, on Saturday, Sunday, workout day on Monday, then the actual game on Tuesday. So we had 5 days of events here in San Diego between the Convention Center and Petco Park. But again, we had concerts down here at our Bayfront Theater. We had Fan Fest all week at the All-Star game where fans were able to get a very, very hands-on, interactive day with the game of baseball. We had the Home Run Derby and the Home Run Derby that I attended last year. We also had the Celebrity and Legends All-Star game and the Futures game, plus the game itself. I would like to see the WNBA try and perhaps mimic, kind of, take bits and pieces from other All-Star festivities, between, at least for me, being able to go and meet so many baseball legends again. I got autographs from a lot of great baseball players, something like that, bring back all the alumni from the past 21 seasons, bring them all in and let them sign autographs from, autograph sessions. So, autograph sessions, fans can take their photos with all the trophies. I got to take my picture with the World Series trophy last year. There was concerts, a concert series. We had Gwen Stefani and No Doubt play here in San Diego. We also had a Need to Breathe play down here. So even maybe a little, bring in a Seattle, Pearl Jam. Let's get Pearl Jam to play at the All-Star game or something like that. And then the Home Run Derby, of course, really couldn't do that. But obviously, I would say for the WNBA, obviously, it's a stretch, of course, to do so. But hey, bits and pieces from other All-Star games, I think would be great. Obviously, between Major League Soccer, having their All-Stars play a club from Europe, I don't know if you want to do that way. Michael says, how about an All-Star game of horse? Now, that would be pretty entertaining. And Christy says, like the idea of concerts at the WNBA All-Star game. I mean, obviously, that's probably a bit far-fetched, but obviously, you can reach out to local or underground city artists. I mean, between, Pearl Jam being one of them, of course, with one of my favorite bands, Pearl Jam being from Seattle, Washington. But even reach out to some of these, to some of these, really popular, underground artists. You can even bring in Macklemore and Ryan Lewis if you want to go full-blown Seattle. Let's do it. Let's do that then. With that, with that though, folks, I could probably go on for another hour if I wanted to, but we will call it a night and sound the final horn right here this evening. Again, folks, to give you your final scores for the night once more: Dream 91, Storm 86, a final in OT, and the Sparks over the Wings from LA 97-87 here this evening from Staples Center. Wednesday schedule of games: one game in Oregon, Liberty and Sun at 4 o'clock Pacific, 7 o'clock Eastern. I got New York winning this game for my pick for the night. And as a reminder again, folks, no shows as of Monday, June 19th through June 26th. With that, guys, for Todd and Mike and Christy, thank you guys for chiming in and keeping me sane tonight. Again, kind of tough to host a show when it's just me hosting. But again, glad for you guys to chime in and keep the conversation flowing. We'll see folks back here either tomorrow or Thursday. If not, we'll see you folks back here after our vacation week does end. With that, the folks, Campbell signing off here. This has been the WNBA 365 Network. Folks, take care and good night. Bye-bye.